welcome to We're So Bloody Early. My name is Jake. I'm 33 years old. I'm a husband and a recent dad. This show is going to be a focus on Bitcoin and how our journeys to this amazing new asset class has affected our lives. I personally have been lucky to work as a broker through my life, an investor, and a couple of failed startups behind me. I'm very excited to start this new project. And these are my two great co-hosts, Matty and Jigs.
Hi guys, I'm Matt. I'm a 35-year-old father and husband, massive lover of sport. I'm an aerospace engineer come entrepreneur. I've been running my own engineering consultancy now for 5 years. I have a diverse range of skills across multiple industry sectors, and that's now led me to my new love, Bitcoin.
And I'm Jigs, 41 years of age, husband, father of three. Worked in the cash and transit industry for 20 years in a labor-intensive job. Recently retired for about a year now. I'm a stay-home dad and a hybrid trader.
Together, we're the co-hosts of the We're So Bloody Early show. In the future, you'll expect to hear from some special guests that we get along to talk through their experiences. Hopefully, we'll be creating some educational content that brings our friends and family along on this journey as well. And we hope you enjoy. Always reach out if you have any questions whatsoever. Thank you very much.
Something I'd like to touch on quickly is going back to this KYC stuff. What do you boys know about CoinJoins? And have you ever looked into it before?
I haven't looked into it, heard a little bit about it. I think you would know more than us.
Well, yeah, okay, just to quickly talk about that for a second. Because of the nature of Bitcoin being an open source monetary network, you can see where coins have been in the past. And so there is talk of regulators coming in and saying, oh, actually the coin that you own was used for a malicious transaction X many transactions ago, so we're going to impound it. And people say, oh, does it matter if you've done KYC through these exchanges? Is it important to have a kind of a trail or a knowledge trail on what that coin's done? So number one, I know for sure that there are people out there that buy Bitcoins direct from Bitcoin miners for 5% premium over the spot price, because they want to know 100% that Bitcoin has never ever been in the hands of anyone else. But as a protection against that, we're now seeing the development of some technology called CoinJoining, where basically you can send Bitcoin and then they scramble up the Bitcoin, because obviously you can split it into all these decimal places, and they just mix it all up and then spit it out the other end. And if you set up a new address with a new open source wallet, like there's wallets out there that you don't have to do KYC for, and suddenly you can own these digital assets without them actually having any history on them. And so what I see happening in the future is the users of these digital assets will be against surveillance. They'll be against the idea of having your funds frozen because the government tells you can and can't do something. And they'll start to use these tools to make regulators' life more difficult, to the extent that it will become completely unfeasible for regulatory bodies in individual nation states to track each person's transactions, because perhaps each time there's a transaction, they go through a CoinJoin process. And that's also part of the storage game, because
Yeah,
what you're owning is not necessarily tainted.
I've heard Preston talk about it. So what are you boys, what's your plan here? You're selling or you're holding? I mean, if it goes up, look, personally, I think I'd be happy with 130K. If we go above that, great. If we just go above 100, I'm happy with that too. I'm not a greedy pig. But drawdown of 50 to 80%, 90%. What are you guys doing there? Are you selling at the top, or you?
I think for myself, going back to my initial part of the conversation, I'll just get to that, but I just want to touch on the end of Jake's conversation, if I may, just for
Go on.
For 2 secs before jumping back to Jigs. But for all the listeners out there, I'd really encourage that you go back and listen to what Jake is saying in detail and understand the intent behind Jake's strategy, because I think it's quite easy for one to potentially gloss over some of the finer details which we're privileged to get from both Jigs and Jake, and in particular with the security aspect there are some very, very valid points that going back, re-listening if you didn't capture all of it is really, really important because, even for me, a newbie, some of the technical strategies that are in place for someone like Jacob beyond my head even. So even for someone like myself, I have to, well, I don't have to, I want to understand it. So I have the privilege of being able to speak to Jake one-on-one and get further access before going and doing my own research. But please don't dismiss that last part of the conversation, because as I said previously, the strategy behind security of these digital assets is paramount. I truly, truly believe that, which then leads to the next part about Jigs's question.
Sorry, Matty, just before you carry on into that bit, I was just going to really highlight what you're hammering in here. What is so important is we are looking at a generational innovation, like as important as, well, one of Robert Breedlove's brilliant articles about the invention of zero. Like, what was the world like before zero actually existed? They used fractions. There wasn't a way of using decimal points. You couldn't go from positive to negative through zero. It's almost mind-bending when you think about, from a mathematical perspective, the fact that zero didn't exist at one point in time. And others talk about it being as important as the printing press or the invention of the wheel. Like, this is a absolutely mega moment in the way that humans cooperate on societal levels and do trade globally. And the reason it's so big is because you no longer need a third party to justify or to say that a transaction is true. You have a peer-to-peer monetary network that you actually can then own your own wealth. So if you own your private keys and you have a multi-sig setup, you have some of the safest or the best defenses against theft you could ever possibly imagine. And not only that, you're genuinely taking full responsibility of your wealth. No one can access it. It's like having your own bank account. So it's very, very exciting once you start to understand what that really means. Like, we spoke earlier about banks stopping you from sending money to places.
It's not your own.
Why? Like, it's my money. Like, let me do what I want with it. Like, fuck off. And so that to me is like the really key part to get across. No, so thank you for highlighting that.
No, I think it's important because that also leads to then understanding Jigs's question about the market, where it's potentially going. What is again, in business as an entrepreneur, I spend a lot of time understanding my own exit strategy. I think it's very, very important to identify that, again, from day one, as silly as that may sound.
Well, Matty, can you tell us a bit about your business and why you started it, and what exit plan did you have at the start, and how has that developed now?
Yeah, so again, background, not to repeat myself, aerospace engineer, worked as an aeronaut, wanted to run my own business, didn't see much opportunity to grow a business in that space here in South Australia. Hopped into the civil structural space. So now I own, jointly with my business partner as 50-50 shareholders in the business, a civil structural engineering firm. So we work across multiple industry sectors. So that's residential, commercial, industrial, education, energy. There's probably 4 or 5 others that I've missed. But I've looked at how to de-risk my business early on. Cash flow is really important. Your creditors, your debtors, your day-to-day operations is key strategy initially, just to make sure that you can stay afloat. So for mine, going back to what my business is we're a consultancy. So we're a service provider, and we sell time. So time is valuable. And so when I understood the value of time, I also understand that for myself, I have a time limit in my business to which the business will outgrow me. And so that's from day one, I understood I wanted to have an exit strategy in place. So without a word of a lie, I reckon 6 months into running business, I started talking to people in industry about bringing a third director in place to essentially help de-risk and diversify the business. So when you're selling time, to go and find a way to sell time in different industry sectors takes time, which seems a bit convoluted, but those that can grasp me will get what I'm saying. So my exit strategy really is to help the business grow, because I love growing people. I'm passionate about people. I love seeing people smile. I love seeing people succeed. And this is part of why I'm doing this with you boys, is because if we can impact the one person that Jigs referenced to, then I felt we've won. But for myself, the humbling nature of what I do is I get to impact multiple people. Our business is 6 years old. We have upwards of 30 staff now, working across different states in the country. And so bringing in that third director, which I did at the start of this year, took me 4 years. And I was very strategic with that person, because I knew if I found the right apple, it would deload me, de-risk me, and allow me to position my brain in a way to, I guess, a bit with the topic we're touching on, is preserve what we've built. Because if Matt was taken away from what I built to start with to focus on something else, there's a chance that preservation of wealth or the preservation of client IP would be lost. So how do I maintain client IP while growing business is a bit like we're talking about here. How do you grow your net wealth in Bitcoin? And Jigs has touched on that with alts, without letting go of your Bitcoin. Well, there's a strategy behind that. We'll touch on it. But back to that business part, my exit strategy is to bring the right people in to help grow the business, which means growing the people internally. Staff retention is a massive KPI for my business. So how do you retain staff? Why do they want to stay on board? How am I assisting them? And there's multiple reasons for each individual. Again, everyone has a different risk appetite or a different want and desire. So once I understood the people that I need, it's because I understood my end goal. And once I reached my end goal, which is diversifying into multiple states, and I've done that, then I feel I'm in a position to hand over the baton to a CEO, an MD, or whoever that may be, to grow the business, and maybe that's into a multinational business. So my exit strategy is getting the right jigsaw pieces put together to allow me to not lose those keys that I built with the initial IP in my client base, and allowing people around me to grow to enhance the business, and slowly over the next 10 years selling down to be a very minor shareholder in the business. And by that stage, doing something else. And, you know, to be honest with you, I've got some meetings with some lawyers tomorrow. I'm starting up another business this week. So I'm always having a crack at something, but it's actually very tangible. You know, the preservation of your business, consultancy, how do you secure that without it being theft, like taken away from you by your competitors, is ironically not too dissimilar to about the topic we're talking about. How do you preserve your BTC without it being potentially taken from you? And then how do you leverage alts, as Jigs would say, to grow that BTC? There are so many tangible methods to what I do in business to what I'm learning now in the crypto space.
And sorry, so Matty, I mean, first of all, congratulations. Awesome story. I love entrepreneurship. I think it's the most important part of every economy. It's sadly been absolutely smashed by all of these ridiculous regulations that we see from governments. It's apparently for our health, but it's all bullshit, right? It's a massive scam. Small and medium businesses are getting killed. And, you know, why is it that Coles or Woolworths or McDonald's or, you know, Telstra are still going, but, you know, the average entrepreneur has been shut down? It doesn't make sense, right? Rightly or wrongly, those laws are in place, or current restrictions, whatever you want to call it. Before I go down that rabbit hole, what do you think has influenced you in terms of your Bitcoin strategy then? So you've got this plan in place, you've got a strategy with your business. When it comes to, you know, do you sell, do you not sell, to Jigsy's question, how do you feel about the potential bull market that we're in with Bitcoin, and your DCA strategy you've mentioned? And is there a point that you might sell in the next, say, 6 to 12 months if you see a certain return, or are you looking longer term than that, perhaps?
I think it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest with you. I do believe that everybody potentially listening to this would selfishly, and I use the word pointed selfishly, have a material want and desire to achieve. Otherwise, you know, living somewhere that may require a certain amount of money, or having a little toy, you know, what someone's goal is will differ. But the one thing about the potential bull market that I'm slightly trepid with, and I again use my business thinking brain and apply that to the Bitcoin, is just the reality of what the world is faced with at the moment. I don't think that can be overlooked. We have seen the reaction to the market initially with the Evergrande Companion. Like, that fear was real for the alts in particular, not so much. BTC was amazing through that week period. I couldn't believe how well it stood up. So that was showing me the maturity of BTC in that phase. So to answer your question, I think from my own personal strategy, there's a certain percentage of my BTC that I will not sell. And that is a very, very long term, I'm talking 15, 20-year aspect. And the dollar cost average aspect that I will also be leveraged such that a certain percentage will be I can't touch and a certain percentage I will sell. And for me at the moment, like 70% of what I hold in BTC Bitcoin, I will not touch, and 30% I will look at selling based off of some of the key indicators that Jigs raised earlier. So, and then that's only from a selfish, a pat on the back aspect. It's like being a director in a business. Why do we take out dividends? You don't need to take out dividends if you don't want, but you need to somehow pat yourself on the back occasionally and say, you know what, my hard work needs to be rewarded here, and it's okay. I'm allowed to be slightly proud of myself occasionally. And I think if you're smart enough, in my opinion, to invest in Bitcoin and you want to reap some rewards out of it, putting your balls on the line, then good luck to you. I think it needs to be done. So, but that's just my very early take on the Bitcoin space. I certainly will be preserving 70% at this stage.
Yeah, I'm not dissimilar. And to switch to you then, Jigsy, in terms of this bull market, and to flip the question back on yourself, do you see yourself selling if the prices go really crazy?
Well, like I was talking to my dad today, and I was saying, like, it really rubs me up the wrong way that, you put your balls on the line, like Matty says, and you take the risk, you do the homework, you put in the 1,000 hours, and you put money down from your hard energy and time that you've invested in, you get rewarded for it, you put that money down, and then if you go and take profits within 12 months, there's some jerk that comes there and says, hey, listen, I'm taking...
Give us half or whatever it is, yeah.
I'm taking some of that capital gains tax, and that just really rubs me up. So the fact that you've got to hold on, at least over 12 months is key. I aim for 3 years. But look, there's great ways that for me, you obviously got to get your initial investment back, or you got to be rewarded your initial investment back, right? And you can do that either by selling, right? If BTC goes up 1,000%, you sell some of it, you get your initial investment back, great. Or you borrow against it, like Celsius or other platforms offer, as a collateralized debt-based loan, and you get some of that value back, but you still hold your Bitcoin. So you've never sold your Bitcoin. Now you cannot be taxed against it because you never sold your Bitcoin. You never created a taxable event, and you have your initial investment. And you can take out a loan, which is up to 3 years. You can extend it to 40 years if you really want. And over that time, BTC will increase in value as we expect, but based on the halvings and all that good gear and the math. And as it appreciates, you take another loan out and you pay off the first loan, and that's how the rich get rich and avoid paying tax. So that's my plan, is to do that. If it shot up ridiculously, like, I'm thinking over 100 grand here for this cycle, but if it shot up to, say, 600, like some people say, you'd be mad not to sell some and maybe buy a toy, or that's a want.
Or a house, or
a house, whatever, but that's a want. It's not a need. I'm not, look.
A new jumper? Sorry, I'm such an asshole. Sorry,
my old
Jigs.
self was very emotional, was all about wants. I'm not about wants anymore. I'm about needs. Do I need a Lamborghini? No, I don't. I've got 2 cars, so I don't need a Lamborghini. Look, I'd like one. I don't need it. Maybe down the track. But you know what? If you never sold that Bitcoin now in this run up, and you held till 2025, and that 1 Bitcoin is worth 600,000 now, but could be worth potentially 2 million the next
6
cycle.
million. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Yeah,
you could buy your Lamborghini, and you can still more than what you would have had if you had it sold now. So yeah, I'm more about the debt-based collateralized loan. Yeah, I don't see me selling.
Okay. So I'm just thinking from a time perspective. We've had a great conversation, and we've talked through how to buy Bitcoin, how to store Bitcoin, and then why you might sell. To try and wrap things up a bit, I guess we'll probably make this into 3 episodes or so, half an hour each. One thing that I have to kind of remind ourselves of is that what Bitcoin is at its very core is a scarce asset. It is, if anything, the most scarce asset man and woman has ever been able to own. And we just happen to be the lucky pricks that found out about it in the first decade of its life. Now, in 100 years' time, I'm confident that Bitcoin will still be alive. And when you start looking into the Bitcoin mining space and how the decentralized nature of the network actually functions, and the way that the whole thing is designed from a difficulty adjustment perspective, from a nodes perspective, from small block size perspective, we'll get onto these subjects later. It's an incredible invention. So sure, one might want to buy a Lamborghini. If it hits 600K a coin in April of next year, the emotion that a human feels, like, that's life-changing money. Oh my God. We did our research, we put some of our savings into this thing, and it did exactly what we expected to happen. Holy shit. But keep that in mind, that if you sell at 600K a coin, now the chances are it will follow this kind of very programmatic process of a peak and then a trough. And it will go from 600 back to 60K, which is roughly where we are today. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. What excites me is that in 2022, you'll see a 600K Bitcoin price. But in 2024 and 2026, as the next halving process happens, well, holy shit, we went from 20K on the 2017-2018 Christmas period to 21-22.
You know
4 years later, we were 600K.
About all this. Sorry, Jake. You know what freaks me out about this? Like so the last cycle, they were looking at 10,000, and it shot up to 20. The cycle before that, they're looking at 1,000, and it shot up well past that. And this cycle, we're looking at 100. So, like, it's just, and the next cycle, they're looking at 1 million after that. So,
can I just touch on one thing with all of this from a newbie's aspect, right? Is understanding where the investment's also coming from. And Jigs and I were talking about this yesterday, that retail, being, I guess, us three, for a better word.
Yeah, we're retail investors, 100%.
Has not really entered the market. And in the capacity that institutional investors have. And once
look at that on Google Trends, I mean, retail's not Googling this. We haven't even hit the highs of what we did in 2017. It hasn't even woken up. But they are all just waiting for institutions to give the green light. I mean, that's what the sheep do. They just wait.
No, I don't know, due to counter that. I'm not sure they're waiting for that.
No, waiting for it. But that'll be the
FOMO for this particular bull run hasn't yet kicked in.
No.
Everyone's not talking about Bitcoin. Like 2017, everyone's like, whoa, what the hell's going on? Bitcoin's like 20 grand a coin. People were piling in at 18K a coin.
Yeah, but they weren't piling in, Jake. They weren't piling in September, October. They were piling in December.
Of that year, 2017.
Of 2017.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, agree. But that was the point. That was the crescendo of that particular bull run. In this particular bull run we're in now, I don't think we've got to that point. And I don't feel personally that the retail investors are following institutional. They're looking at Dogecoin, another dumb shit that, you know, Elon Musk is talking about. And that's totally fair enough. But there will come a point in the next 6 months where it reaches this like frenetic craziness. Everyone just starts buying it because they think it's going to go up forever. And that's obviously where the smart trading plan comes in. You're looking at the fear and greed index. You're looking at how many people are hashtagging Bitcoin on Twitter. You're looking at how many people are searching it on google.com. And you're like, you can start to work out that this is getting toppy. The question then becomes, do you just never sell? Or if you can time it, you sell at the peak in April of next year, and then you buy back in as things ship themselves over the consequent 3 or 4 months. That's obviously very hard to do. And even the best traders in the world can't time Bitcoin. And hence you go back to that DCA strategy and just being more conservative with things. But it's, yeah. It's
also, for someone like me, I know how to leverage alts to accumulate more Bitcoin. Whereas someone who doesn't know how to do that, they will see their value, that their initial investment go up 300, 400,000, whatever it is. And they will, the only way for them to accumulate more Bitcoin is to sell at the top, or what they think is the top, and then buy back, wait until there's a bottom and then buy back in at the bottom. Again, that's trying to catch a knife. But like I say, if there is strategies where you can look at the Bitcoin investor tool, where the 2-year moving average of the Bitcoin investor tool, which you can find on look into bitcoin.com, where you always buy below the red line, which is the 2-year moving average, and then multiply that by 5 is a green line, and that's where you sell. Or it might actually be green and red, whatever, but that's where you sell, and you start dollar cost averaging once you hit that region. So that's one strategy. I mean, the other strategy was, like I was talking about, the 70 to 40 weeks before halving, and then the 70 to 90 weeks after halving is when you dollar cost average in, dollar cost average out. There's different ways to do it. But again, everyone has to be happy with their Bitcoin position. I mean, if you bought and you only got 0.1 Bitcoin, are you happy with that? Or do you want more? Like, you know,
everyone wants more.
Someone who has 10, are you happy with that? You know, I mean, what's the percentage of people in the world if everyone had a Bitcoin? I think it's 0.025.
Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah.
That is just crazy. So to have 0.1 of a Bitcoin, you are well ahead of everyone who could own one in the world.
Mm.
But then again, I don't know how many millionaires are in the world. There's 21 million Bitcoin.
50 million millionaires.
Sorry?
I think there's 50 million millionaires in the world.
So even all those millionaires,
I could have just made that up. We should search that.
I don't know, whatever it is, but what do you think?
I think it is though.
Yeah, so all the millionaires in the world couldn't own one now, you know, with what's left.
I'm looking it up. Hang on. 56 million. There you go.
6 million. There we go.
Sorry?
56 million millionaires in the world.
And there's only 21.
Yeah. So just to pull this all together, guys, what a wonderful conversation we've had today. Thank you so much. GC can stop recording in a second and hopefully won't completely cut us off, which is what he did last time. But we've talked through how to buy Bitcoin in the first place, how to then store it, and then should you or shouldn't you sell. I think the last point I want to just leave it on is, if you sell $600,000 worth of Bitcoin in April of next year and buy a Lamborghini, 4 years after that, you might be sitting on a Lamborghini that's still worth $600,000 or whatever it might be worth. But the chances of it going up 10 or 20x or 100x from that position, as the rest of the world wakes up to buying the scarcest asset man's ever created, you have bought an ego trip in comparison to what in only a 4-year period might become enough wealth to support your ancestors. Is that the right way of saying it? No, that's before you. Predecessors, maybe. What? No, and that's also wrong. Anyway, point being, your kids, your grandkids' kids, they'll all be able to live off that wealth you generate, rather than making the kind of ego-driven choice of purchasing that Lambo. So I certainly intend on buying a nice car if things go crazy. Why not? But yeah, it's something one must temper with the future opportunity of the asset as well.
But in saying that buying the car, like it's an experience. You want to experience driving that car. So what I did earlier this year is when we had a nice run up, I just borrowed against some of the assets, the value of the asset that I had, and hired a Lamborghini for 24 hours and drove that around for 24 hours.
That's a much better strategy.
I got my fuel. I got my fuel. It was delicious, and
job done.
Going for another 4 years.
We'll have to do an episode then about this alt strategy that Jigs is employing, because it's
very important,
well worth digging into. Well, boys, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, you. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Bye.